It's Pride Month! Yay! So instead of temporarily pandering to the LGBT, I figured I could instead make some videos on topics that are typically viewed from a progressive or left-leaning perspective. As someone who voted for Trump this past election, it bothered me to know just how many people accused me of being against LGBT rights simply because of who I voted for. And as someone who believes in the concept of two genders, I grew more concerned hearing the words TERF or transphobic being thrown around for not subscribing to this new LGBT ideology. Notice how I said new ideology. If you didn't know, the LGBT acceptance rate has been on the decline for a while now. If I think back 20 years ago, I perceived the LGBT community in a different light than I do today. I viewed them as happy, fun, and confident, whereas now, as an outsider looking in, it seems angry, combative, and lacking self-confidence. And I'm not the only one that feels this way. In fact, many of the LGBT whom I've spoken with within the last year have told me that they don't even consider themselves to be a part of the community in the same way I don't consider myself to be a part of the Black community. Yes, I'm Black, and yes, they're gay, but our own respective groups seem to have certain ideologies that are divisive and oftentimes self-deprecating. I believe that it's this new ideology that's hurting the acceptance more than hate crimes and discrimination. So for this series, I decided to kick it off with one of the most touchy subjects as it pertains to the LGBT, and that is the trans agenda. Now, I aim to do two things with these videos. Number one is to highlight different perspectives that are normally ignored as it pertains to issues within the LGBT. This is very important because if you're saying that you support that community but only certain people that believe a certain thing, then what you're actually advocating for is a political or ideological agenda. And the second thing that I want to accomplish with these videos is to try and connect with those who might not agree or accept people within the LGBT community for one reason or another. Because even if you don't agree with their lifestyle, at the end of the day, you still need them, and I'll get to that later. So let's get started. As I said earlier, when I made the decision to vote for Trump this past election, I was bombarded with accusations that I hated the LGBT despite never doing or saying anything remotely close to hateful. But then again, most things these days can get you labeled as transphobic, which is really fascinating to me. I remember back in the day, if someone said they didn't agree with the trans or gay lifestyle due to religious beliefs, for example, that was the end of the story. We just accepted the reality that not everyone will accept everyone else. That's just life. But now the rhetoric has progressed, or regressed, I should say, to giving labels to those that don't agree. What does that accomplish exactly? Nothing productive, that's for sure. Two things come to mind when this happens. Number one is I feel a sense of insecurity. And number two, it actually creates more problems. Now, I'm not trans myself. However, if I wanted to transition into a man, I would be doing it for myself. And I suspect that's why others do it in the first place. It's something for you, right? It makes you happy, right? Meaning the opinions of others should be irrelevant in this context because transitioning is something for you. So when I see someone vilified for refusing to view a transsexual in the same way that they view themselves, I can't help but ask, why? Why do you care? Why do you long for people to see you as you see yourself? If someone doesn't like you, why would you want to force them to like you? And I know the typical response after that would be something to the effect of, but what they're saying is harmful. Guess what? Life in general can be harmful. Words don't automatically mean you're in danger, and unfortunately, the mean things that people say isn't going to be the most difficult thing you encounter in life. Because at that point, now we get into the business of measuring whose pain is worse. I get called mean things all the time. Just scroll through my comment section and you won't have to go far before finding someone that hates me on a personal level. Do I give them an egregious label so that everyone knows just how bad of a person they are? No. Granted, I might troll them back a little bit, but at the end of the day, I acknowledge that regardless of who you are, there will always be people who dislike you or even hate you. It's inevitable. Because when a community makes a habit of demanding the acceptance of others, it creates friction. And as I mentioned earlier, it inadvertently makes matters worse because the people that are being shamed or the people witnessing the shaming then start to build a very generalized perception of that particular group. And I know what some of you will say, well, they shouldn't generalize because trans people are not a monolith. Okay, let's go with that. Let's pretend you actually believe that. Do me a favor. During this year's Pride celebrations, I want you to count how many people attended wearing MAGA hats. Then come back here and report your observations. And in the event that you're able to spot some, how were they treated? I'm sure you can understand what I'm alluding to, and that's my point. It's very easy to talk about inclusion and diversity until it pertains to diversity of thought. So when I was shamed for voting against LGBT rights, I was intrigued to see that the bulk of letters I receive from supporters of this channel are a part of the LGBT themselves, which at that point, it dawned on me. I wasn't transphobic. I simply refused to subscribe to the new agenda. The agenda that expects me to see others as they see themselves. Or the agenda that expects me to change my speech or beliefs in order to be more inclusive. Is it really a trans thing if only some trans people believe it? These are questions that I hope every ally asks themselves because, just as I mentioned in my previous video, how do you expect to advocate for a group when you're cherry-picking who to advocate for based on how they think? Which leads me to my first guest, a Trump-supporting transsexual man. Yeah, I know. Mainstream media would have you believe that this is an oxymoron or the equivalent to a mythical unicorn. But no, they exist. So the next thing that you should consider is why do conservative or right-leaning ideas get ignored within the LGBT? One could say, well, those ideas are bad. But if that's the case, is that truly diversity and inclusion? Take it away, Marcus.
Hi, my name is Marcus, and I'm a 21-year-old transsexual from female to male, but most importantly, I'm not a leftist. I've been on testosterone for 2 years, and I just got top surgery in November of last year, and just by undergoing that, people assume that I'm on the left, when in reality, I'm a proud Trump supporter. I love diversity, and diversity to me means to contain different sides, different aspects, and variations, and here I'm not talking about different skin colors, sexualities, or gender identities. I'm talking about diversity of thought. The LGBT community loves diversity, but not the real kind. When regular people look at the community, they see or probably expect a loving, tolerant space, but that's far from the truth. The LGBT community can act loving and caring until you step out of line. Leftist ideology is the only ideology that is accepted in the community, and if you don't believe in it, you're excluded. Another expectation you as an LGBT person get is that you kind of owe your support and activism to other minority groups and other causes like Black Lives Matter, feminism, fat acceptance movement. But they don't acknowledge gay and trans people who have different beliefs than them. They don't acknowledge gay and trans people who want to wear the MAGA hat and go to Pride. I have been accused endless of times of dealing with internalized transphobia. I think this is the most common hate I get as a transsexual who's not crazy, is that I must hate myself if I don't support children transitioning, millions of genders, no gatekeeping in trans clinics. Yes, these are the people telling me that I hate myself because I want to get conservatives' approval of transsexualism while they're the ones with the flag saying queers for Palestine. Every year it becomes harder for the general public to not step out of line, to not say the wrong thing, to not be transphobic. The amount of social acceptance radical trans activists nowadays are ruining is unbelievable, and it kills me to see that very few radical trans activists are ruining the community and they're ruining the picture of what it means to be a transsexual. I make political content on the internet trying to get people in the middle, especially the people on the right, to understand what I'm going through. Transsexuals, they do suffer from a mental disorder called gender dysphoria, so what we are experiencing is uncontrollable. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain, and just by talking about this, I have changed a lot of people's minds. Look at my DMs, they're filled with people saying I used to be transphobic, now I'm not anymore, and it's because of people like me. I'm a Trump supporter. I am a conservative. I believe in strong borders, low taxes, small government, thought out foreign policies. I am for legal immigration, not illegal immigration, and it has nothing to do with my identity. I receive a lot of love in the non-leftist and the conservative community, and I really hope that the future will change, that rational activists are doing a little hijacking from these crazy, crazy people.
I can already hear the activists furiously typing away at their keyboards. Something, but Marcus isn't truly marginalized because he still benefits from white privilege. What about the rhetoric that perpetuates harmful stereotypes towards trans women of color? As a black person who rejects victimhood, I find it tacky that someone would generalize a group of people as a means to substantiate their point of view. But if the narrative is that black trans women are the most disenfranchised, then surely those that believe this wouldn't mind listening to my next guest. Oh yeah, I can play that game. See, the thing that I hate about social justice or fake activism is that the goalpost is constantly moving because their logic is very flawed, which is part of the reason I decided to share who I voted for last year. I started to see a narrative being built that suggested only racist white people voted for Trump. I wanted these people to reconcile their personal beliefs with reality, so I forced them to reconsider their own biases by acknowledging that black and Hispanic people also voted for Trump. And when that happened, the narrative shifted to me being paid for by the Republican Party, or my favorite, having internalized racism. So according to the rules, black trans women receive the most hate and are the most susceptible to violence, right? Well, for those that believe this, I'd be curious to know what the new excuse will be after hearing from my next guest. Take it away, Miyoko.
What is up, everyone? My name is Miyoko, and first and foremost, I just want to give a big shout out to Gothix for having me on her channel so I could talk my shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm sick and tired of all the garbage that's going on with the trans community and, with the black community too. So anyway, if you couldn't already tell, I'm black and trans, and over the last few years, I found it very frustrating to be told how difficult my life must be because of how marginalized and oppressed I am by white supremacy, or to be told that I have internalized transphobia because I don't believe in transgender ideology. I only believe in two sexes. I don't believe that gender is a social construct. And I know for a fact that trans women do not belong in female sports because I'm a competitive athlete, I'm an ex-competitive athlete. I used to run track and competed in gymnastics. I can go on and on and on about that shit, but for the sake of this video, I just wanted to talk about the struggles I face as a black trans woman in society. So the struggles I face are my own community telling me what to think, how to feel, who to support, who to cancel, and if I don't follow suit, then I'm a bootlicker who's dying for the approval and validation of cisgender heterosexual people. The struggles I face as a black trans woman in society are cisgender people using virtue signaling as a way to bully me into accepting their theories that everyone hates me because of my skin color and gender identity, and that I should fight back against the system that seeks to prohibit me from living my best life. Liberation, as they call it. But liberation from what exactly? I live a very comfortable and, dare I say, privileged upper middle class life, which results from the choices I made. However, with this victimhood mentality encouraged by critical race theory and the Black Trans Lives Matter movement, it is suggested that all of my choices were made for me because of my skin color and gender identity. And if that was the case, then my quality of life and living standards should be well below average, which it absolutely is not. Also, why am I not experiencing this alarming rate of violence and discrimination that supposedly plagues the Black trans community? And do not misunderstand. I'm not saying that Black trans people don't experience violence. What I'm saying is that it is blown out of proportion just to make a political statement and create a false sense of urgency just for attention. And as a result, people like me who don't victimize themselves get infantilized and underestimated and stereotyped by people who think they're wokey pokey, but honestly, they're just straight up disrespectful. But I mean, before people assume things about me, like maybe I had wealthy, supportive parents and I lived an insulated life, so of course I would have these out of touch Uncle Tom views. Let me share with you some of the things I went through. I'm Jamaican. Jamaica is a beautiful country with beautiful people and fantastic music and food, but the culture is highly and overtly homophobic. So my family was not with the shits. They were not accepting of my transition. As a matter of fact, I got kicked out at 15 because of it. I was homeless, living in a shelter that I was technically too young to live in. I got into trouble with the law. I was in and out of jail and on probation since I was 15, so I know what it's like to struggle and feel stuck in the judicial system. However, that never stopped me from knowing my worth and knowing that I always deserved more in life and that it was up to me to achieve what I knew I deserved. Now, back then when all of this shit happened, this was like 2005 to 2008, trans people were not as socially accepted back then as we are now, which I mean is not exactly saying much, but going by the current logic and narrative, I should have been brutalized by the cops, brutalized by my fellow inmates in jail. I would still have a criminal record and wouldn't be able to travel to certain countries, nor wouldn't I have been able to get my first one-bedroom apartment at 18 years old because apparently trans people can't get housing. My life should have been ruined by the bad choices I made in my youth, and because of being Black and trans, my punishments should have significantly outweighed my crimes. Now, you can argue that I was lucky to have had a judge that saw something special in me, but there was nothing lucky about that entire experience. I could have easily fallen prey to the psychological trappings of bad decision making, as so many criminals do. But if I could come out of such a rough start to life and find success, stability, and security with little to no support, what exactly is stopping other Black trans women from doing the same? There's nothing special about me, especially according to the narrative. I'm just a Black trans woman, therefore an oppressed and handicapped monolith. But somehow I managed to slip through the cracks of oppression and ended up with a six-figure income living in one of the most expensive cities in North America. And I'm not an outlier here. I've seen plenty of other Black trans women who are doing better than me. Look at Laverne Cox and Janet Mock, for instance. Those Black trans women are literally worth millions of dollars. So I'm left confused as to who these so-called disenfranchised people actually are. When I look at the Black trans community and I compare it to the Black heterosexual community, it's the same fucking thing. You have those that thrive, those that struggle, and those in the middle. And if you expand the parameters to include Blacks, whites, and Asians, the rules don't change. We all have the same resources and opportunities. It's all about individual mentality. What do you want to do with your life? How hard are you willing to fight for that goal? What exactly are you doing to improve yourself? Are you responsible? Are you accountable? Are you goal-oriented? There are just so many more important things that contribute to an individual's success than blaming your incompetence and shortcomings on white people. To my fellow Black trans women out there, stop fucking victimizing yourself and get up off that ass. To the so-called allies of our community, stop enabling the Black trans community to believe these stupid fucking ideas that we will never amount to anything because of our gender identity and skin color. It's ridiculous. Anyway, happy Pride, guys. Thanks for listening.
If you're someone who claims to advocate for the best interests of trans people, then this video shouldn't upset you more than the excusable hate that people like Marcus and Miyoko receive for refusing to conform to everyone else's way of thinking. This video should motivate you to consider the concerns of those trans people who are always brushed aside for their problematic views. Because otherwise, I don't think you're in a position to say you truly care for trans people. No, what you care about is an ideological agenda, which is why I'm so critical of allyship. When people advocate for other groups that they're not a part of themselves, they tend to only listen to one particular side within that group. I have the same criticisms for white people who shout the phrase, "Black Lives Matter," while being so vitriolic to Black voices they've determined are not worthy of their advocacy. It's easy to say you want to shield the disenfranchised from harmful rhetoric, but I wonder if you've ever considered exactly how harmful it is to be convinced that only a specific type of person within that group is deserving of love and tolerance. Is that truly inclusive? Is it truly a safe space? Something to think about. Now, before I close out this video, I did want to circle back to what I said earlier if you just so happen to be someone that doesn't agree with the trans lifestyle for one reason or another. The thing that prompted me to make this video was seeing the reactions of the public when Caitlyn Jenner, or as some may remember her as Bruce Jenner, decided to run for governor of California. One point that I'm always trying to make on this channel time and time again is that people are not monoliths. Whether you're gay, trans, Black, whatever, not everyone thinks or believes the same thing, regardless of how they identify. However, not everyone understands this. And because of that, the left has a tendency to weaponize identity politics to achieve their ends. They'll generalize a specific demographic without listening to everyone within that demographic. They'll say, hey, trans women belong in female sports, without considering that not every trans person agrees with that statement. So when I saw how hateful some of the responses were from the left after Caitlyn announced she would be running for governor, I looked at that as an opportunity to break through the identity politics. If you claim to advocate for trans people, then that advocacy shouldn't be exclusive to only those who believe the same thing as you. And when I saw some people on the right refusing to even consider voting for someone who went against their personal or religious beliefs, I also saw an opportunity to find a middle ground. Listen, I can appreciate that people are so passionate and devoted to their own beliefs, and I'm not saying that they have to understand or even be accepting of a lifestyle that they don't agree with. However, I would implore everyone who thinks this way to really observe the state of the world right now. There's a lot of divisive ideology that's coming from the trans community that I, as well as many transsexuals, don't agree with. So instead of complaining at the people who are in favor of this stuff, perhaps it would be more effective to just play the game. If identity politics is the tool that's being used to generalize groups of people based on their identity, then let's amplify those who on the surface fit that mold but are intellectually diverse. If the narrative is that only cis straight people have an issue with a particular ideology, for example, trans women in female sports, then let's present the public with the trans person that also rejects that ideology. Yeah, the goalpost of excuses will eventually move, but our main goal is to remove the identity shield that a lot of these politicians and activists hide behind. If we can force them to confront the reality that they've been ignoring a specific section of the trans community while claiming to advocate on behalf of all trans people, it then exposes them just enough to see what they've really been advocating for, an ideological or political agenda. Remember, despite personal beliefs, there's a lot that we can agree on, and sometimes, in order for positive change to happen, We need to be willing to find a middle ground. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content like this. And also, be sure to keep an eye out for the next installment of the Pride series that I'm doing for this channel. It would be a drag if you missed it. My name is Gothix, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!